right, welcome to the Dales Report. Happy to be joined once again with the CEO of MYND Life Sciences, Dr. Lyle Oberg. Dr. Oberg, great to have you back on. How are things?
Things are very well, Shad. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to connect. Like to have you on. It's been about a month now since you went public. There's been a lot of psychedelic and psilocybin-based research companies that have come to market recently. And sometimes, let's face it, it's difficult for the average investor to keep up. But when we look at MYND, it has held its own in challenging market conditions and maintains a valuation of almost $100 million, which is actually larger than many valuations of like better known companies like in the space. Some of the big ones like, don't want to actually get into the details of what specific companies, but let's recap the completed months since going public. What have you liked and what are some of the things you like to, improve or build on, knowing that you're 30 days in from going public?
Well, I think probably some of the important things are the liquidity that we saw initially.
Yeah.
We saw something like to 200,000 shares traded in the first day, which is great. Liquidity has fallen off a little bit since then, but the price has held stable. And to me, that signals that people are wanting to hold on their shares. They're excited about the company and they want to see the shares rise. So I think that that's a very positive thing to be able to see that. On the negative side, liquidity certainly could be a bit better. The other nice thing for us personally is that we've been able to make some of the announcements that we've been holding off over the last 6 months while we were waiting for the BC Securities Commission. It kind of puts you in a state of stasis. And once we were able to go public, we were able to make those announcements, which is great. Some of the wonderful things we're doing.
Well, I do want to get into that, but before I do that, I do want to ask the question. When you look at the overall consensus of the industry and industry news in particular, last week, June 17th, you were presenting at the Psychedelic, Psychiatry and Beyond Conference, which was sponsored by H.C. Wainwright and Company, which is a mid-tier New York-based investment bank. This was a big, big event, and the who's who of the industry were obviously involved. So I'd be curious to know, how was the event, and are you finding a big uptick in interest in the sector, given all the positive developments, especially with U.S. investors?
Yeah, it was a great event, and it certainly enabled us to tell our story to a lot of different people, a lot of different biotech investors. And what we saw was a huge amount of interest in the industry. The curiosity is certainly there, and we're getting that from the biotechs. They're interested in what we're doing. They're taking a look at what we're doing. And overall, it was very, very positive, given the chance to tell our story, which is a somewhat different story than a lot of the psychedelic companies that are out there. We're more into the pure research side that, is connected to a genetic pathway. So it's a little bit different. We don't have clinics, but we have the knowledge and the research and the scientists.
Yeah, and I think that'll come to fruition more and more as obviously the industry progresses. And as you and I both know, this is very, very early. We're not even 5% into the industry, so it's going to take some time, but there's obviously a lot of general interest there. I do want to focus on some of the news. You recently announced a letter of intent with IM Vaccines and Immunotherapeutics, which outlines an exclusive licensing agreement with respect to IM's proprietary technologies for applications to the central nervous system vaccines. So walk me through what this means. And I say this because most investors will obviously associate psilocybin research with direct therapeutic applications in the brain for mental health disorders and not vaccine development. So hoping you can maybe explain a little bit further as to what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we're doing research into psilocybin, which is the so-called cure for depression and other CNS disorders, the neuroinflammation. So that's one element of our company. The second element is once you have that disease state, you can actually test for it. And so that's a biomarker. So we patented the biomarker a little while ago. We made an announcement on that, which will enable us to track whether people are becoming more depressed, less depressed, or depressed in general. So that's number two. And then the third leg of the stool is how to prevent it. Like, how do we stop people from being depressed, from getting that neuroinflammation that's causing the depression?
Right.
And EAM is a company that has made great strides in essentially vaccines 2.0 or 3.0. They're utilizing self-amplifying mRNA and some very interesting algorithms that allow them to attack the neuroinflammation that is occurring. So we hedged our bet with EAM and got the license to be able to license all of their CNS vaccines. And you hear about, for example, viral vaccines, but there's also anti-cancer vaccines, and from our point of view, anti-CNS disease vaccines. So you're looking at MS, you're looking at Alzheimer's, you're looking at a whole myriad that we have just licensed out from them and are able to use their research. So we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, in due time, is this what we'll look for within this industry if everything goes the way you're hoping it does, but more of a vaccine model?
Well, I think you're seeing more and more of that. And vaccines can also be called immunotherapies.
Okay.
So what you're in essence doing is you're in essence turning your own body into its own hospital, so to speak, and it's
Hmm.
defending the body and it's attacking the disease states. And if you can have your own body do that, it is
Hmm.
so much more effective. And I think we saw this in the mRNA vaccines against COVID.
Right.
They were highly effective, and this is kind of the next generation where we're utilizing self-amplifying mRNA, which is a slightly different technique.
Okay. I wanted to, again, the research is your industry leader when it comes to research. And a lot of the stuff I enjoy talking to you, it's amazing some of the stuff that I do learn. We've talked about it in the past, which is research that's conducted at the Michael Smith Laboratory in British Columbia, which is a renowned psychedelic research facility. We're seeing more and more news of psychedelic companies conducting research out of the Caribbean. In your point of view, what specifically can you explain to us the advantages of the Michael Smith Laboratory versus, say, studies that are being conducted in the Caribbean, if you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, I certainly can.
Yeah,
I think in I think in any university around the world, there's a definite tier of universities. And for example, something that's discovered in Harvard is probably, better than something that's developed in, the University of Wisconsin. Nothing against the University of Wisconsin, but the tiers are there. And UBC is certainly one of the top tier universities in the world. It's probably the number 2 university in Canada and probably in the top 20 in the world. So reputationally,
right.
people trust what comes from UBC, and we're happy to do that. And the other side of it is being in Canada, we actually have to live by all the regulations from Health Canada, and we find that a plus
Right.
because ultimately our medications that we bring out are going to be approved in Canada.
Yep.
They're also going to be approved in the US. And coming from a reputable Canadian university like UBC, it is so much easier to get a drug through to completion than it is from some of the Caribbean universities.
Right. Well
It's
said.
as simple as that.
Well said. You mentioned earlier, it's been a busy month, obviously, since you went public, busy news cycle since going public, and including your most recent news from earlier this week concerning expanding your intellectual portfolio that will target Alzheimer's disease and related forms of dementia. So your research team has shown significant progress in advancing your technology related to these diseases. So I find this announcement very interesting, knowing the amount of people worldwide that have been diagnosed with this. So help me understand, how does your strategy work pertaining to this? And what are you seeing based on your progress that is important to share to the psychedelic community?
Well, a couple of things. And first of all, I will preface this by saying that we have an article coming out in one of the top 3 journals in the world.
Wow.
And it will be out probably within about 3 to 4 weeks. It's been accepted. So I am limited in what I can actually say. But there were some key points that were in that press release that may be fairly subtle. And one of the key points is when it comes to Alzheimer's disease, we're not just stopping it, we're not just slowing it, but we're actually regressing it.
Wow.
And so just think on that one for a minute. So some of our research is
Well,
showing
think of
that
how many
Alzheimer's,
families. Let's think of how many families are affected by this, right?
it's crazy. And our research is showing a different way to use the psychedelics and other medications. And we're really, really excited about it. Coming out in a very, very reputable journal. Again, it harkens back to what you talked about the universities. There are lots of journals in the world, but if you get one in the top 3, I think that certainly means something, and we're right there. So we're pretty excited about it.
So when you look at a top 3 publication, and I know you can't say too much, but I'm going to push the envelope a little bit. Um, How is the whole, I guess, the research that you're doing, how did the information get shared to them? What did they like? What are they seeing? And I guess most importantly, what does this look like, I guess, in 2 to 3 years from now?
Well, we're well on the way in some of the preclinical studies, and indeed, on some medications, our team has actually, almost completed the preclinical trials. So we're well on our way to being into clinical trials. And if what we're seeing is followed through in humans from the animal models, it's pretty substantial. It really is.
I can't get over how big of an announcement this is, considering, like you said, it is a pandemic. When you think of like even a country like Canada and an aging country and how many people are affected by it now. I have a father that actually is through it right now. And it's like something like this could obviously change the whole complexion of a family, which is very, very promising, knowing that there's, currently no cure for it, right?
Yeah, and the other side of it is what we've done and what our research has done with our research team is that they've taken different looks at different diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than kind of focusing on the same paradigm that everyone has looked at, we've chosen to look at it from slightly different angles. And often those angles come to fruition. We see it in neuroinflammation and depression. We're seeing it in Alzheimer's disease. And I certainly will have to talk to you again once these articles are out.
Yeah.
But we're pretty excited about it. And I think it's a huge step forward. Is there a chance that it doesn't work? Yeah, it's research, and but everything that we've seen is very, very exciting.
That's exciting. In addition to this announcement, you recently had events pertaining to your patent applications and diagnostic programs. So maybe provide a quick recap of some of the news that has come out over the past month, and how do you see this developing over the next, say, 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, the biomarker is a pretty big one for us as well, because what it enables us to do is it gives us a clear path to revenue by probably Q1 of next year. Biomarker allows us to study levels of inflammation in the body. And what we're able to do with that, first of all, is potentially diagnose depression. But probably even more importantly, and the way the test works is we're able to follow people and determine when they're getting better or when they're getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's critical when it comes to depression, because many people don't come in when the symptoms are just a little bit. They wait until it's a full-blown MDD, full-blown major depressive disorder, and then they come in, and then it's catastrophic at times. So if we're able to determine as a depressed person is starting to relapse, that's critical. And we feel we can be out in the market, certainly into the research and development market, where, when people are clamoring for it. We've had interest from Australia. We've had interest from a couple of centers in the US, one in Canada, that want to use our biomarkers in their research, because when it comes to depression, they're just not that happy with the subjective models of symptomology, where they would much sooner have an objective model of a test to be able to determine this. And the cool thing about this test is it's simply done on a dried blood sample. So people can do it at home. So you prick your finger, put it on the film, and you can essentially put it in the mail and mail it to us, and we can do it. So it's a good path to revenue, but it also helps significantly the diagnosis and monitoring of the inflammatory diseases.
It's fascinating to see what's developing and learning within this space. Keep up the great work. I always love talking to you. It's amazing the stuff that you obviously teach us and my viewers, but let's keep in touch. MYND Life Sciences trades on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the ticker symbol MYND. Dr. Oberg, appreciate your time.